Welcome learners to this mini lecture corresponding with pages 172 to 178 of Technics and Civilization, the Degradation of the Worker. As the Paleotechnic reached its peak, the capitalists who owned the factories and the means of production really came to look at the worker and therefore at humans as means rather than ends. As far as they were concerned, labor was just another resource to be exploited. No different, really, than any natural resource, wood, coal. When the resource is used up or no longer able to contribute to the end product, it's discarded or gotten rid of. In this sense, the responsibility for the worker's life and health, as far as the factory owners were concerned, ended with cash payment for the day's labor. With the shift from the handicraft worker and cottage system to the factory system, came unpleasant consequences for the worker. Skill was now separated from production. It was no longer needed in the production of goods. The factory system had three requirements for success, and those were castration of skill, meaning the separation of skill from production, which under the handicraft system had been key. The discipline of starvation, of really having leverage over those workers, that if you don't follow the rules, if you don't submit to these harsh conditions, then go ahead and leave, and we'll find someone just like you to replace you. They'll be able to do the job just as well as you, and you'll be out of work and out of money. And then the closing of alternative occupations, closing of the trades, the difficulty of finding other work. There just really weren't other options. So these three things worked against the worker. And then the worker had to put up with the poor conditions. Along with the lack of concern for efficiency of the equipment, there was also a lack of concern for the safety of the workers who operated the equipment. If these workers are expendable means of production, abundant resources, why be concerned spending additional money on the conservation of the labor force? If you look at the following quote taken from the U.S. Department of Labor's website, and I have a link to that in the New Knowledge folder, a web link to this page, which gives, really this page, web page, explains or gives a record of some of the factory inspection and the factory inspector reports from 1902 to 1907. Here's really a quote that illustrates some of the problems and the poor conditions of the workers. Less spectacular but more frequent were the individual tragedies reported in the factory inspector, resulting from unprotected machinery in a variety of industries. A machinist got his arm caught in a rapidly moving belt. It was jerked from its socket, and he fell 50 feet to the floor. His fellow workers, aghast at the man's shrieks, ran in panic from the shop. A young boy working in a coffin plant was decapitated and had both arms and both legs torn off when he was caught on shafting rotating at 300 revolutions per minute. A worker in a brick-making factory was caught in a belt and had most of his skin torn off. A sawmill worker fell onto a large, unguarded circular saw and was split in two. When a worker got caught in the large flywheel of the main steam power plant of a Navy yard, his arms and legs were torn off, and the lifeless trunk was hurled against a wall 50 feet away. Perhaps the most horrifying accident reported in the journal was described as follows. In plain sight of 100 fellow workmen, Martin Scofield was cut into small pieces at the Philadelphia Caramel Works. He was dragged into the machinery and his head severed. A second later, both legs were cut off. Then one arm, after the other, fell into the lesser wheels below, both being cut into many parts. Before the machinery could be stopped, Stoffel had literally been chopped to pieces. I'm glad those times are gone, right? I know that some of you live and work around the northern panhandle of West Virginia. You may have seen this story, which concerns an industrial accident from early December, and you can see that a plant where the workers handle highly flammable materials, and they're saying maybe it was some different metal dust from the metal that exploded. But anyway, they point out that this was the 5th fatality at that plant in the last 15 years. And so, as we look, it illustrates the fact that industrial workers and miners, as we've heard, know from recent events, still face extremely dangerous working conditions today. Although obviously there are many more safety precautions put into place, but still much more dangerous than what we would like those types of jobs to be. So we look at our summary. Just make sure to participate in the threaded discussion board activity for this learning session. And also make sure to complete the essay question corresponding to this learning session in the Learning Session 5 assessment. Thank you for viewing this mini lecture.